All right, today we're talking about how to grow your people, and by growing your people, to grow your business. My guest today is Nick Thompson. I'll tell you more about him in a second, so stay tuned.
Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we feature top entrepreneurs, business leaders, and thought leaders, and ask them how they built key relationships to get where they are today. Now, let's get started with the show.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I'm the host of the show, and every week I get to talk to interesting CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs from all kinds of companies all over the world. We've had Netflix, we've had Kinko's, we've had YPO, EO, Grubhub, Redfin, all kinds of interesting ones. Check out the archives and you can dive into some of those great episodes that we have there. And of course, this episode is brought to you by Rise 25, my company where we help B2B businesses get clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships with done-for-you podcasts and content marketing. And if you are curious about that or starting a B2B podcast, go to rise25.com. You can learn all about what we do over there. And Nick, I'm so excited to have you here today. You are the co-founder and president over at Veya Office Professionals. Now, this is a company that provides clients with virtual services in a variety of different packages and different styles, basically helping businesses to scale up. And he has over 25 years of experience in leadership and executive management, co-founded and presided, over several companies, including one that he scaled up to over $100 million a year with 20 different offices across Canada. We're going to talk, of course, about that one and that whole story. He's also the author of an amazing book by the name of Look Out, You're About to Get Effed, I will say, the 13 Biggest Pitfalls of Business, How to Avoid Them. Hilarious title. You definitely have to check it out. And he's got an array of different accolades, including being a finalist for the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Awards, which is not at all easy to do. So super impressed to look at your background here, Nick, and to have you here today. And I love to start people off by asking a little bit about how they were as a kid and whether they engaged in any entrepreneurial ventures. And we were chatting about it a second ago. And you said that, looking back on your childhood, you felt that there were some entrepreneurial mindset approaches to schooling and in your personal life. And maybe it's a case of just kind of looking back and now you see it, you see what you were doing. So tell us a little bit about what that was like.
Thanks, John. And thanks for having me here, by the way. I love this podcast and you speak to an awful lot of people and you provide a lot of great content. So thank you. I'm very honored to be on your show. So, I have reflected over the years because they say, that entrepreneurial blood is typically somewhere in there. You hear stories of people that started, their kind of sideline businesses when they were in elementary school and that sort of thing. And I didn't really have it. I did start working when I was 13 at a garden center. So my parents put that work ethic, they drove that into me through my life. But what I did come to understand is, I did some fairly entrepreneurial thinking things. So I'm going to age myself. Okay. So back in 1988, the World Olympics were in Calgary. That's my hometown. And I was in high school. And my dad was actually working for the Olympics in a position there, helping with their marketing and some other things. And so being fairly sporty, I wanted to be involved and I wanted to go watch the Olympics. And there's it was on for 2 weeks and it's typically in February, right over school. And exams actually. So I thought, I'm going to approach my school and I'm going to see if they will take the 2 weeks off, give everybody, listen. So I went and met the board of the school and said, listen, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. People my age will probably never see this in their hometown again. We should close the school for 2 weeks. I've already petitioned some of the students. We'll more than happy, of course, to make up any exams and any work, but let us go experience the incredible opportunity in front of us. And they
that's a pretty good argument, I have to say.
Sure. Yeah. I thought so. And they kind of somewhat laughed me out of the room. They said, look, this is it's a government board of education and you can't, we can't do that.
Yeah.
And so I went back to my big group of friends and said, look, I tried, I canvassed. They said, there's no way, go away. keep doing your schoolwork. And I said, okay, no worries. See you in 2 weeks. So I left. I left for 2 weeks. I went and experienced the Olympics, lifetime experience, right? I'll never forget it. Like this is the stuff that that helps you grow in life. And so I experienced the Olympics for 2 weeks, came back to school, and got reprimanded. And I said, that's fine. I got a great experience, and I realized I actually had all the points I needed to graduate. I actually didn't need to stay there any longer. So I said, I've got my advanced diploma. I can actually leave right now. So I left school a semester early and went to the workforce, and then came back to graduate.
Wow.
So that was fairly entrepreneurial, I think.
Yeah. And so like you ended up starting a marketing company. And you said your dad had been doing marketing. So I guess Apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Did you learn a lot from your dad around marketing?
A little bit. Actually, after the Olympics, my dad finished working with the Olympics, and he was in the printing industry prior to that. And he said, look, I'm too old, too expensive to get hired back at a printing company of some sort. So he wanted to find a small business to purchase. And so he asked my brother and I, hey, I'm going to buy a small business. I'll fund it. Do you want to join me? Eventually take it over and be my retirement plan, right?
And you're how old at this point?
24.
24. Okay.
And I've actually been working in the ski industry for 10 years prior, doing marketing and running ski schools at that point.
Okay.
And I said, look, if it's in marketing, I'm in. My brother, he's in the arts, and he said, business, no, thank you. He's all about arts. So I joined my parents, and we searched out this small marketing company. I was the 5th employee. They said, this is perfect. We'll buy this marketing company. We'll see where it goes. And only 4 years later, my parents said, we're ready to retire. And I was like, oh, we've hardly gotten into this thing. And we're like, no, you can buy us out now. And so we created a long-term buyout plan so they could retire. And then I started to grow it.
How was it working with your father?
You know what? I've always been very close with my parents, and that really helped. We've always had a great relationship, still a parent-kid relationship, but it's been very healthy. And so we had our ups and downs, but we created, just like you do with any partner, you create defining lines on who does what and where the authority starts and ends. And we created that right from the start. So I learned that from my dad saying, this is what we need to do. And we had, we were Dave and Nick in the office. It wasn't, dad and son. And so we kept it very professional, and it worked out really well. We butted heads plenty, but it worked out well.
Okay. So they decide they're going to leave. You build a buyout plan. And then what happens next? How does it go once your father and it sounds like your mother was working the business also, once they phase out?
So we hired a consultant, and the consultant it would transition. I was general manager at the time. I worked my way up from warehouse. I worked all the positions. I was general manager at the time, and he was the president CEO. And we were then going to do a switch. So we hired a consultant, and we interviewed many. And the consultant came in and said, I'm going to tell you a fact of business, any small business, pretty much any business. The potential of that business relies on one person and one person only, and that's the person at the top. And I said, we're effed. If it's going to be me, we're screwed, right?
Yeah, so you had a title for your book already.
that's kind of where it came from, right?
But let me we're laughing about it, but I mean, was that a imposter syndrome kicking in? What was that?
No, it was a neophyte syndrome. I was scared because I'd not been in this position before, right?
How big was the company at this point? You mentioned you were employee number 5, but when you took over,
so at this time, I was taking over. We were just 1.2 to 1.4 million, somewhere in there. Okay.
So you got and you got some employees, you got some families that are depending on you.
10 or so employees.
Yeah.
So it was growing. And I was no, I was sincerely worried, saying if it relies only on me, it doesn't have far to go until we hit the top.
So what?
So
So what'd you do then?
the consultant said, I'll show you a way that you can open up and allow everybody to perform at their best, where it doesn't just rely on you, but you can work as a team and you enable them to perform and have some of their own autonomy in their jobs and decision making. And that's really where growing the people started, is that concept. I said, oh, that sounds good. Obviously, that was his pitch. So we hired him.
Yeah.
And he worked with us for a year and a half. And we opened up that culture so that people had control over their own jobs. They made their own job descriptions. We call them performance descriptions. People would negotiate. So it didn't rely on just one person as the bottleneck.
Yeah.
And what I've learned since then is the job of any entrepreneur is to work yourself out of a job. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
what year was this, by the way, that you took over?
That was the year 2000.
2000. Okay.
2000.
Okay.
And so
epic time to take over a business, because
oh my gosh,
this is like height of the market. Everything's gung ho. Everything's up until the right, to the right. And then I believe, at least in the United States, the stock market, people say that March or April of 2000 was kind of the peak of everything. And then stuff kind of went downhill after that.
.com, like, holy smokes.
Did that affect you in Calgary?
Yeah, it absolutely did. It did. Now, in the marketing business, we took that as an opportunity to say, hey, you need to market more now than ever, because you need to show people how you are different from the competition, et cetera. Now, our marketing was promotional material, so logoed merchandise.
Okay.
But we showed people how to use that to create better relationships and build their network. And so we took that as an opportunity. And we as a company actually kept growing.
Really?
Yes.
Even after 9/11 and that slowed down as well?
Yeah. Well, no, 9/11. And we all remember where we were on 9/11.
Yep.
I was driving to a large oil and gas services company in Calgary, and I was going to pitch them on a massive program for their whole company, a large company, like Fortune 1000 company. And so I get there, and obviously it's mayhem, and we're all looking at TVs and monitors, and I give them the pitch. And everyone's
you go forward with the pitch anyway?
Yeah.
So everyone's completely distracted.
We've got the monitors while I'm pitching.
And you're still pitching.
And they're saying, please go ahead. And instead of, again,
it's awful.
The energy of our youth, instead of saying, like, let's schedule another time.
Right.
Like, this is not a good time.
Right.
They're like, go ahead and pitch us. And so I do, I want to please. And of course, nothing comes of that. Like, we didn't get the program. I don't even think we got a call back. Nothing.
Yeah.
Like, what a dumb time to do a pitch, right? So I should have had the foresight to say, listen, I think it was maturity, right? Yeah. To say, listen, this is not a good time. We need to be honoring, our brothers and sisters and all the stuff that's going on. But
I mean, a little bit older, a little bit more mature, one of us would say, like, even if you want me to pitch, now is just not the right time, right?
Right.
So you imagine you're freaking out because you're responsible for the business. You go back. Did you end up having to do layoffs after that? What's the next year plus after 9/11 like for you?
So 9/11, after that, a lot of our clients were downsizing. And the very first thing that a lot of companies look to cut is their marketing budget, because they're like, if it's between cutting these people and cutting some of our marketing materials, logoed stuff, wow, that's an easy call.
Go. Yeah,
right. And so we did. What we actually did was I did some calculations on our payroll and whatnot. And I had a big company meeting. We had one every month. And I said, we've got two choices. We can cut, we can let go, the more junior people in our company, so people that haven't been there as long. And it's going to be probably a 20% cut. Or we could band together and all work together to keep everyone's job, but we would all go down to a 4-day work week. Well, I wouldn't. I cut my pay, but I'll have a full-time job still. So what everyone did was they chose, so I let them vote somewhat on it, and they chose to keep everyone.
Wow.
And so everyone went to a 4-day work week, which meant they got paid 80%, right? So just down 1 day. I, of course, still had my 100-hour work week. But I took the same cut. I took a 20% cut so that I could walk the talk. And in the end, that lasted probably a year. In the end, we started to settle out, and we just like COVID, we did all the cost analysis and whatever, and we started to settle out. We did end up bringing everybody back full time, and I did end up letting 2 or 3 people go, more as a bit of a weed out at the time. But it was kind of interesting having them vote and wanting to keep everybody. But it really helped everyone rally together.
Yeah, because it depends on how much you like the junior guy or not. Like the junior guy there is going, come on, guys, 20% cut, 20% cut.
Sitting in the corner sweating, but they bonded over that.
What is your pitch? So take me back to like after 9/11, and you're talking to these potential clients, and they're like, you know what, we can't buy any more of these branded logo sweatshirts, hats, scarves, whatever. And what is your pitch to them for why it's important?
Yeah, so my pitch was something along the lines of, because now I've been out of the business for 7 years now.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you're rusty at this point, but I love catching you off.
Yeah, but thanks for putting me on the spot. I guess that's what you do on these podcasts.
Exactly. Let's see if you still got it.
Yeah, exactly, right. Get your checkbook out. I'm going to sell you. So it was somewhat along the lines that yes, business is down. We understand that. The best time to market is when everyone else's business is down, because what all your competitors are doing is cutting all their marketing down to, if anything, a sliver. If you then say, hey, I'm going to up that marketing, you can beat out your competition because your name is out there still. So people will, out of sight, out of mind. So when people start to see your name more than the competitors, they're like, oh, they're not doing so well because their marketing has gone down. They must be doing well. What are they doing right? Because we see them maintaining their marketing. Yeah. And a lot of companies were like, I get that. And we did the same thing. We kept our marketing because we had to walk our talk. We kept our marketing even, and it worked really well. Some companies were like, yeah, fine, nice pitch. Not going to do it. Of course, it's fine.
Did you diversify into other areas, or were you just branded merchandise the entire time?
It was mainly branded merchandise, but we did warehousing. We did awards programs, incentive programs. Okay. Yeah, we did. We purchased large amounts. In fact, at our largest, we had warehouses on 5 continents for our really global clients, so they could get different items out of there, and they actually ended up asking us to store their own goods in those warehouses. So we became a little bit of a third-party logistics company before that was a thing.
Good job of spotting opportunity there.
That's right. Yeah, they just fell in our laps, right?
So you probably had a lot of money in this inventory spread around the globe. So you end up. So we're talking 9/11, so 2001. By 2010, correct me if I'm wrong, by 2010, you're at $100 million, 20 locations. You've done.
It was 2015 when we hit 100.
2015 when you hit $100 million. Okay, so 14 years later, you hit $100 million from laying people off and gathering in a conference room and saying, guys, should we cut our pay, or should we should we let Jimmy in the warehouse, who just started a month ago, should we let him go? Yeah. That's an insane ride. So and also in 2014, you've got an economic crisis that affects Calgary. In 2017, 2018, we have the whole economic crash. So it's not like we had it up and to the right economy.
No easy ride, right?
Yeah. So what happened after 9/11 that led to that growth?
So, okay. So I said that I can attribute pretty much every success to EO in some fashion. And so I had a gentleman in a previous forum group, EO forum group, was in pharmaceutical, owned a pharmacy chain. And he was explaining to us in one of the meetings, just sort of on the side, that in pharmacy, I might be telling a secret about pharmacies. I don't know, but I'm not in the business. So if you're in pharmacy and you don't do this, you should start looking at it. Pharmacy, the smaller pharmacies, in order to combat the large conglomerates, the big pharma, they get together. Competitors will get together and they create a purchasing company. And these are all competitors. And the purchasing company buys all of the pharmaceuticals and supplies and confectionery.
Collective purchase to lower their costs. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay.
You know, right? So you get volume, you get rebates, and all the owners of the different pharmacies have a little share in this purchasing company, and they actually draw dividends out as well.
Okay.
Because this company, not only is it getting better pricing, it's also getting rebates.
Got it. Okay.
You know, and that sort of thing. So it is making some money. And I was like, wow, I can't believe that you do that with competitors, right? So essentially you're buying the same stuff. You're selling it roughly for the same price then. What would that look like in my industry?
Yeah.
And so I actually approached 4 other businesses across Canada, so they weren't in our market, and said, hey, I'm looking at maybe starting this idea of a joined purchasing company. And I sought them out. They all had kind of a similar philosophy to mine. And we started talking about how we set it up. And we called it a variation of Brand Alliance. And what it became was, one of the partners said, you know where we could really make money is if we sell together. So you service my clients, I service them in Toronto, you service them in Calgary, and you service them in Edmonton, and you service them in Vancouver. So all over the country, we can service the same clients, and we're in their backyard. And so we quite liked that idea, and we ended up merging the whole thing together in 2010.
What was your superpower or your company's superpower that you brought to the table in that arrangement? What did they see in you that you could do better than what they were doing, and vice versa? What were they doing better that you felt like it would be advantageous to you?
One of the very first conversations we had was we need to make sure that we set ego aside, because you got 5 business leaders, and ego is going to get in the way, and so we all agreed and sincerely agreed that ego's got to be aside. And we realized that all 5 partners had a specialty. So we had one partner that was really good in the marketing and ideas and that. So he became 5th owner and also, the marketing director.
Yeah.
We had one that was highly competent in financials. One that was highly competent in negotiating with vendors. Right? So a vendor supplier director. And I said, I don't really have a specialty. And
that's what you said.
That's what I said.
Is that imposter syndrome coming back again?
Totally. Here it comes again, right? And the partner said, no, you do, because number one, this is your brainchild. So you have vision, lots of vision, and don't have an ego. So you're willing to continue to brush off, I don't have a superpower, if you will. And they said, you need to be our president and chair, because they liked the way that the integrity I brought to the business and the industry. And so they wanted me to lead it. And so that's what I did. And the partnership worked really well. And I said, I remember when I was partners with my parents, we defined these lines. And I took that concept and said, we need to do the same thing so that we aren't crossing when it comes to making decisions. and we did it. We put it in writing. We made agreements. We put it. We spent a long time, probably 2 years, putting our shareholder agreement together,
Wow.
saying what else could go wrong, what else could go wrong, and we really well defined all the lines, and it was a great partnership.
But at some point, it didn't go so well. At some point, it starts to go downhill. First of all, what was your peak in terms of revenue or headcount or clients, or you mentioned you had warehouses all over the globe?
Yeah. So 20 offices across North America, five warehousing on 5 continents, just under 350 employees, just over 100 million gross revenue.
Amazing.
Those are the numbers.
And so it's going well for a little while until it doesn't. And we were talking before, and you said the problem is that they didn't agree with growing your people, focusing on their people. So how did that show up?
So we had this partnership group of 5, and we were very successful in our formula, in our roles, in the way that we approached business. And between 2010 and 2015, we actually developed a formula. There's a company called Hub International. It's the fourth, was at the time anyway, the 4th largest independent insurance company in the world. Their head office is in Chicago. The gentleman that founded that lived in Toronto and happened to know one of my partners in Toronto. So he said, let's have a conversation, because he has scaled this insurance business to beyond. And so we actually went down to Chicago. We met with him.
This is just to get ideas?
Just to get ideas on how we can scale this business.
Okay.
And he talked about how his formula for consolidating the industry that he's in, the insurance industry. So we took that formula, and with his permission, and we came back and said, we're going to now consolidate the industry by working on mergers and acquisitions.
Okay.
And so between 2010 and 2015, we acquired roughly 20 companies.
It's a lot. That's like for a year. Wow. It's a lot.
Yeah, a lot. And turned down hundreds because we had a formula. And so we grew that way to get to our peak in 2015.
Now,
so it worked really well until 2015.
Okay. But I want to focus on why the first acquisitions worked. This is really relevant to me because I've had 50 conversations this year with companies about doing an acquisition. For a variety of different reasons, haven't been able to consummate anything yet. But it's easier said than done. It's not easy to find a company that you can acquire. So why do you think you were able to do 20 over 5 years?
Yeah. So the first thing we did is we put interest out in our industry. Nobody was acquiring. There's a few little transactions here and there. They're hapstance. We put out on purpose. We are in acquisition mode. We were the largest company of our kind in our industry in Canada, and we were going to continue to grow, and we wanted to expand worldwide, right? So that's our vision. And we actually advertised to our industry specific that if lots of people were aging out and not knowing what to do with their company, and we said, we can be your home, right? We can be the home for your company, your people, your clients. And so we advertised that. In the meantime, we used this formula that we acquired through our meeting with the president of Hub. And the formula was actually incredibly simple, but very profound. And he had 5 elements that were non-negotiable. So, you have to, the company has to be in a cash positive position and show a history of that. Okay. Right? So we don't want to fail. A lot of times people put their company up for sale when it's going downhill. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. So like, throwing out a life raft. Has to be cash positive. There's a debt to equity ratio that must show there, because a bank for funding requires a certain debt to equity ratio. Mm-hmm. Typically in North America, it's 1.25 equity per $1 of liability, but it varies, especially since the banking crisis. So that had to be there. There was a cultural element. So we designed a sort of a cultural assessment, if you will, where it had to meet this cultural. So there was 5 elements, fairly simple, but if it didn't check all 5, if it checked 4 out of 5, it was a no. And he was getting, what did he say, dozens a week. So his job was literally just saying no, no, yes, no, no, yes. And the yeses went to a team, the integration team. And so we developed the same system where we said, these are the 5 criteria. And if they meet those, that's when we start the process of getting to know them, doing the due diligence, etc.
And I imagine there was a certain size you're looking for, because by the time you get big, then you don't want to do a smaller acquisition. And are you looking for founders that are just looking to exit, or did some of these founders and their teams come and join and stick around for a while? What was the integration model, I guess? It
was a mixed bag. So we had a couple of formulas based on the previous owner's desire, right? So many times it's, I want to help integrate and then move into the sunset. But there were a few that said, listen, I just, I don't have the energy or the risk tolerance to do this myself anymore. So I'd like someone to take that on, and I will happily contribute, my value through sales and that sort of thing to the equation. So it was a bit of a mixed bag.
Okay. So what happens after the 20 acquisitions? What happens in 2015, 2016 that changes everything?
So along that line, we meet another company that is doing the same thing as we are. Another North America-wide company. They're doing the same thing. And we end up meeting at one of the conferences in the industry. And we're like, oh, you're growing rapidly. They're talking about building their people. If we build their people, that'll build the company. If you take care of the people, they'll take care of the clients. That was our philosophy. So they were saying the same thing, and eating up companies. And so we had a number of initial chats and decided, you know what, if we could save a lot of time going global if we just put these two bigger conglomerates together, and that's what we did. So that was between 2010 2015, and then in mid 2015 we officially merged the 2 companies together.
Okay. In the previous acquisition, you have 5 companies and you're all good at something respectively. Now you've got a much larger company, and then you've got 2 big companies merging together. How did you figure out that distribution of responsibility and who would be in what role?
Yeah, so we had the same discussion about ego. We had we said, look, we can't have, 15 people on our board. So we need to have representatives, an equal amount of representatives from both companies be on the board, as well as we'd like to get some outside influence. And so they actually had a couple of people on their board that were just board members. They were from other industries, big companies. And so we said, hey, that's a great start. Bring them, keep them on the board. And we knew somebody from a large company, one of my partners did, who we could bring from outside. So it was kind of I think it was like 4-4-3. So 4 from our company, 4 from their company, and 3 outside to make I think it was, I don't think it was 11. I think it was 10, however it worked out.
And what role did you step into in the new company?
So something I have a large chapter of in my book is I was chair, and I said, look, at the time I have a young family. I cannot be traveling all over the world. Family is first for me. And I don't want to spend a lot of that time away. I had a partner that in our Brand Alliance company, they didn't have kids, didn't want kids. He comes from a larger company industry, loves to travel. I said, I think you should be the chair and not me.
Mm.
And so that was one of the big mistakes, because not that he was a bad chair, he was excellent, but the other group ended up bullying him
Mm. That's
into
kind of interesting. That's, there's kind of two different things. One is like having to travel around for those
yeah
duties, and the other is being chair of a company,
yeah
which, it seems like there's kind of a disconnect between those two, or maybe two people could have done two different roles. Am I misinterpreting that?
could have
Yeah.
been.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, had I done it over again, I would have maybe done a joint chairmanships where you
Mm.
have different responsibilities. But the responsibility of the chair was actually going to all of the regions.
Okay.
So they were we were using the chair as the sort of glue that
Okay.
glue that combines
Okay.
everything.
Okay.
Good point. And so he ended up getting quite bullied by the other group and started making some getting forced his hand into some poor decisions. And that's when I started arguing with the board.
And how did
And
they not value their people? What were some specific examples
yeah,
of ways in which that happened?
so there's talk and there's action, right? And so when people say, "Oh, we really value our people and we believe in growing our people," and they were winning a ton of awards too. When we started integrating all the departments, we saw some unhappy people in their departments, and when we dig into that, we find out that the way that their culture was under the surface was not the same as what they were showing, the shiny facade in the front.
Yeah.
And it was, quite late at that point in the game
And
to realize that.
you were no longer chair. So what was your role at this point?
So what we did is I became president. I stayed as president of Canada,
Okay.
and we had a president of the US,
Okay.
and we had the chair of the board and all the other global positions
Okay. Okay.
that were there. And
By the way, I've interviewed so many people that find themselves, they get to this point where they've achieved great success. They built this big company through acquisitions or growth or whatever. And then they just find like they're so unhappy and they just miss being at the growth stage. Now, you join this company when your dad acquires it and there's your employee number 5. Are you unhappy at this point? Or were you happy initially before it started to go downhill? What's your mindset like at this point?
I was so okay. Kind of brings me to one of the biggest points of where I ended up, why I ended up on the outside of the company was I was extremely happy with all, there's ups and downs, of course, but over time, very happy with how everything was going up until the point where I'm like, uh-oh, I'm fighting the board now, and we're not seeing eye to eye. And I think our culture was suffering because of they started to. So day 2 after the merge, we have a board meeting, and a couple of the outside board members, they weren't involved in the company, right?
Yeah.
They said, "Okay, time to trim the fat." And I said, "What do you mean?" And they said, "Well, we're going to have all these synergies, so we need to cut roughly 15 to 20% of the staff, of 60 people, 60 to 80 people."
Oh.
And I said, no, that's not what we talked about. Like we built the company by building people. Yes, there'll be synergies, but we're going to make sure everyone's well taken care of. And if we do cut anyone, we're going to help them get another bloody job, because that's what we do. And they're like, "No, that's not how it goes. We just need to cut them because we need to do this fast." And that's when the first big flag came up for me, going, "Uh-oh, what have I done? Like, what have I gotten into here?" Because my side of my shareholder group, we were. They said, "Okay, so what do you think about this merge?" And I said, "Hey, we got to do it. Like, this is how we go global. This will be a very large company, and we'll be able to go more global and have places in other countries." And so they said, "Okay, well, we trust you." And so when I heard this at the board meeting the day after the merge, I was like, uh-oh, I may have overlooked some things.
And so in retrospect, how would you have done things differently now, knowing what you know now?
So again, I spend a lot of time. I spent years at looking in the mirror on how I ended up on the outside of the company. But what I came to realize was all this growth, all this success, all the awards, you mentioned some of them, the accolades, you can't help but let that get to your head somewhat. Like it felt good. Yeah. And when I saw red flags, I said, yeah, but look how good we're doing over here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we'll overcome that. But look how good we're doing here. Let's just keep driving forward. So what happened is I developed a large amount of hubris. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize it at the time. That's only through, years of therapy, looking in the mirror. But then I realized, you know what? I did that because I let it get to my head. And I'm not the type of person that normally lets stuff get to their head. But over time, it can happen.
What was the breaking point for you? Because at some point you finally said, guys, either it's either we change our ways or else I'm stepping down.
That's right. So we were not fully 2 years into it, had cut, 60 to 80 people in the company. The culture was taking a dive. We used to have people clamoring to come work for our company. Nobody was at the door anymore, within 2 years. And so I finally said, look, we either change the way we're approaching people in our company, or you're not going to have me here to help build this thing. And I thought that was enough weight, being one of the founders. And they essentially said, okay, see you later.
And what was that like for you?
That was devastating. My wife did say to me, so this was mid 2017. She said, Nick, because I obviously lots of sleepless nights. I'm seeing families get decimated in it, and that kills me. And she said, Nick, if you stick with this, do you think you have an opportunity to turn it around? If you really stick with it and persevere. And I said, honestly, no, they won't listen to me. I don't think I can do anything. And she said, well, you've made your decision. And so with a heavy heart, I didn't renew my own employment contract and shareholder agreement and didn't go back. And so that was a difficult time.
Was it, had you had an opportunity to take in chips off the table through some of the previous acquisitions, or were you still kind of all in? And so it was also financially devastating.
It was financially devastating because I was still all in. I mean, we put everything into it. And then when I negotiated, not being employed there triggered a buyout of shares in our agreement. And at that time, we weren't making a lot of money because, a merge sucks a lot of resources, right?
So that affected the buyout amount then.
Yeah, well, they actually came to me. I did my calculation with my lawyer and said, here's how much, we are saying the shares are worth and roughly how much you owe. And they came back and said, here's our calculation. And it's minus 2 cents a share. So guess how much you get from that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we fought that out. I got back my shareholders' loans. And I had a severance, fairly decent severance package, but that's it. I didn't get anything for my shares at all.
So devastating. And then the company ends up basically going down to nothing.
Yeah. So it was mid 2017, and 2.5 years later, I get a text from an ex-partner that was still in the business saying, hey, we just claimed bankruptcy and we will no longer be a business anywhere in the world. They don't exist anymore.
How does a business of that size collapse? Looking back on it now, how does that happen? Just what are
I can tell you, I'll right in the name formula.
It's right in the name of your book. So
it is in the name of my book.
What were the ways that the business was effed?
Yeah. So if if you treat your people poorly, they won't want to do the work for you. It will show through with clients. I mean, if you've ever been on a customer service call with a miserable customer service agent, we all have, you're like, you don't even like this job, right?
Yeah.
And it's likely because they're in a stuck position. They haven't been given any authority to make any decisions, and they're not treated that well, and maybe even treated like a number, that old saying. And you're not going to get the best out of your people. If you treat them really well, you can get the best out of your people. So it comes down to opening up your people's ability to perform their best.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's engaging them with the vision of the company, that's showing them how what they do, what impact it has to clients, which impacts economy, which impacts some world cause, right? It's Simon Sinek talks about cause,
Mm-hmm.
right? Mm-hmm. And having a greater cause. Like if you can show them how they impact it, you can engage them like this. We all want purpose. We all want to do something for a reason,
mm-hmm.
right? Even if it's factory line work, what are we doing? What are we building? Who are we helping in the world by doing what we do? Yeah. And so they did not believe in that. And whenever I've let people go in the past, I've always been more than fair, because I thought, a little bit of extra money is at least going to show that I care, because the people that are left in your company watch how you let people go. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I would always be a little bit more generous. Right. Mm-hmm. There may be a few people out there that say that's not what he did with me, but
the ones you liked anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so when we were, trimming the fat, as it were, in this company, they'd say, okay, well, we're letting you go. We're not doing anything for you. As a starting point, you get 0, and then it's up for negotiation.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, that's not going to sit well with people. And the employment laws in Canada, John, are very, very weighted for the employee. Mm-hmm. So there's large severance packages. We have employment lawyers galore. Mm-hmm. And so when in Canada in particular, you can't just let somebody go without a reasonable severance package. So they said, no, we're just going to say, we'll let you go and you need to negotiate from there. So that didn't sit well. And of course, they have friends inside the company, and they're telling the stories, and everyone's like, I don't know if I want to work here anymore.
Yeah. So you end up closing one chapter. Unfortunately, the company goes down to nothing. Let's talk about your new company. What inspired that? I'm a bit fascinated by how people's choices when they start a new company are influenced by the challenges and the constraints of the previous company. And I'm going to just read into this a little bit, but VEA or VEA is how you pronounce it. You do executive assistant, bookkeeping, business manager, fracture controller. You got a bunch of different services like that. And it's right in the name, virtual. Before, you had all these physical locations. You had physical goods you were shipping around. You had warehouses. You had people all over the globe. And I'm guessing that perhaps in this new world that we live in, you were seeking to build a business that didn't have those previous constraints. Am I reading into that correctly?
Awesome. Very, very insightful. Yes and no. We, again, born out of EO, we have a friend in EO, still a very good friend. And he's telling us way back in 2015, 2016, about this virtual executive assistant he works with. And I said, ooh, that's interesting. How does that work? And so he kind of explains how it works. And I came home to my wife and said, so this is prior to me leaving the original company, there's something here. The way of the world is going a bit more virtual, fractional staff. There's something here and I thought my wife would be really interested in it. She's incredibly well organized and has always been in a sort of corporate supportive role. And so she liked the idea and started a little incorporation and got a couple of clients. and the company was born doing virtual EA work.
Okay.
And so she, as all companies start, she was the only virtual EA and the owner. And then she's like, wow, we got enough clients. We need to hire some more. And so we hired some more, and it started to grow. And while I was trying to figure out my life after I left my company, I got into, I was telling you, I do, the global training for the accelerator program in EO now. So I got into that. I do business executive team coaching for larger businesses as well through an organization called Results. That connection was from EO. And so I do that as well. And the company, Vea, then a client said, well, do you do fractional bookkeeping? And so my wife and I talked to him. Let's say yes. And, so we said yes, and we got fractional bookkeeping, a bookkeeper. And then it started to grow where she said, I need you here. Like, this company is growing. We're growing across the country, and we need to, put some more room into it. It's a going concern. And I said, sounds great. So I joined her in the venture, and now we have the 4 basically virtual EAs, virtual bookkeepers, fractional controllers, and we just launched this year virtual management, so they can help companies with project management, process execution, mapping processes, something as companies grow. And so we launched that this year, and it's been growing fantastic. We work with companies right across North America. We're going to stay in North America because we understand the employment laws within North America. If we go outside of North America, to get a little hazy.
So many companies need help with that, with putting their processes and SOPs together and all that kind of stuff. And I'm curious, having previously been employee number 5 in another family member, your parents' business,
right,
and then moving into that business, did that make it easier going to work in this business that your wife had started? And what has that relationship been like, working with your wife?
John, you have very, very insightful questions. Thank you. Yes and no. Again, I'm going to tell you, because working with your wife is different than working with a different family member. I will tell you, same concept though. Working with a family member, there are some rules you put into place. Defining line between responsibility and decision making. And I said, look, you've asked me to come work in this company. You're the boss. Right? Like I am a minority shareholder, and she is the majority shareholder. So there's a dividing line. And so, I may argue my points from my own experience, but at the end of the day, you are the one that makes the decision. And so we agreed to that. That takes some humility too. And also, we work when we work, and we do home and family when we do home and family. We don't let the two mix.
Good advice for any couples out there considering doing a business together. We're way over in time, so I'm going to wrap up with our last question. Hopefully you're okay for one last question.
Absolutely.
My last question is my gratitude question. I'm a big fan of expressing gratitude, especially to those who've helped you along the way. A lot of times people will mention family or team, which is fine, but I also love to hear stories about peers and contemporaries and mentors who've helped you in your journey. Who would you want to shout out?
Thank you. And I agree, obviously family and team help you get to where you are, but along the way, several relationships have really stood out for me. Obviously my parents, for giving me the work ethic and showing me some of the tools that have been ingrained in me in growing businesses. But so I mentioned in 2000, I took over the family business, and I was the only shareholder then. In 2001, I joined EO, and it was actually a friend of my dad's that was in YPO, and I didn't know what any of it was. And so my dad saying, hey, my son took over last year, and he seems to be doing fairly well. He doesn't really have much of a network of peers. And he said, oh, if he wants to go somewhere in business, he has to join EO. And his name is Dale Hodgson. He's still a YPO member. And I've thanked him on a number of these podcasts, and I've sent him letters, and I sent him a copy of my book. And so he's become quite a mentor over the years, including, buying some commercial real estate to house, a past business. So definitely I would like to shout out to him. And of course, my EO Forum group. I dedicated my book to my EO Forum members, present and past. And I sent them all copies with personalized notes going back all those years. Some of them I haven't seen. Some of the people I haven't seen in almost 20 years. Because what an impact, all the different ideas that you get out of it and support you get out of it. It is incredible to have this network and of people. And we feel this automatic bond. As soon as we know we're in the same association, we're like, hey.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that book again is Look Out, You're About to Get Effed, the 13 Biggest Pitfalls of Business and How to Avoid Them. And VEA Virtual Executive Assistance Services is the company. Where can people go to learn more about you, Nick, and connect with you?
Yeah, you can go to VEAPros, VEAPROS.com to learn about that company. You can go to nickthompsonbooks.com, one word, to learn about the book, and you can connect with me in LinkedIn. That's probably the best one. Facebook is kind of just with friends and family. I don't do a lot of business on there, but you're happy to join anywhere. And of course, any EO channel, I'm on all of them. So
yeah. Nick, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.